I have not done a video before on how to remove external bottom bracket cranks, so we are going to party. So this is my how to remove Shimano external bottom bracket cranks and bottom bracket. It's not something I usually mess with, but I've done it a bunch of times at the shop. So where are we going to start? Most good bike mechanics will just work on the backside from this side. We don't have to, and I want to show it more up close and in depth. So let's flip this dude around after I just put it here. And again, don't clamp on the tubes. Put a dummy seat post in, put a bolt on if you can. This is a special stand with a really light, even clamping force. Not likely to damage the tube. Make sure you're not pinching anything. These cables or these cable stops become like a high spot, like a hammer blow when you try and tighten the stands down. Let's put a giant dent in your tube. Especially if you have the old style park arm, which is just like a big lever handle to tighten it. Just push that lever in. I've seen people just absolutely dent, crush, cake, and break aluminum and carbon frames with that stuff. And not even kidding. I've definitely clamped those old style park clamps down and accidentally had a braze on in the way, and done that, put a big giant dent in the tube. You're like, ugh. On a bike you're just stripping down and going to recycle, no big deal. On a customer's bike, it can be a real big deal. What about bolts? Alright, so these modern style cranks have this little plastic screw-in cap, and they have two bolts to tighten them on. Kind of BMX-y. So we're gonna loosen these bolts. Oh, I do want to also check, I like to make sure, see how cranks and bottom brackets feel to give me a clue as whether they're reusable or not. So I want to make sure, oh, this wiggles a little bit. I don't like that. Let's try this side. So this side wiggles not at all. I'm going side to side. I feel no play on the bottom bracket. This side does, so maybe these bolts are already loose. Yeah, these bolts are already loose. So that's good. I just want to know the bolts are loose and there's not a problem with the actual crank. Okay. We'll also look at the interface where the crank presses onto the bottom bracket spindle and make sure that the splines or the threads or the tapers or whatever don't look mangled or damaged at all. There's no point in installing a crank that's already damaged. It's going to come loose and fall off. Now there are some tools for removing this little dust cap. This is like the little Park tool. This is a cool little dude. It's the Park Tools BBT 102, it looks like. So it's got the little teethy guys for engaging these splines. And it's also got a little hook dude on here, because there's usually a little metal tab in here that you have to like hook up out of the way of the bolts. Usually. On some of the earlier models, I don't see one on this one. This is just a cheap generic knockoff of like the Park or Shimano tool for pulling the bottom bracket off. And it usually also has this spline tool with a little twisty knob. That is on real tight. Why on so tight, bro? Yeah, a little twisty knob. So we can try them. Here's the Park one. Just fits into these little splines. It should fit. And just twists right out. Or you can try this one, which fits into the splines. And then you can just sort of hold the crank and the tool with your hand and just spin it right out. Spin, 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 spin. That's what this little guy looks like. Just little splines. This side's is a little threaded. It's got little knurls on the outside to help you start putting it back in. The same thing, you put this back in with these bolts loose, and tighten it down with this tool, so it sucks the whole crank on as far as it can go, and then you tighten these bolts to hold it in place. Alright, so now this is all loose. It should wiggle right off, and it does. You can see this is like this modern stuff's all turning more and more BMX-y all the time. So this is like a bunch of little teeny tiny splines, ton of little teeny tiny splines. I want to look in here at all these splines and make sure they don't look flattened, mashed, mushed, destroyed, stripped out, so it doesn't look like the crank was ever on the splines and twisted around the splines, just tore into the aluminum. So it looks pretty good. You can see all those splines in there. Ooh, it's so spliny. This is nice. It's a 170, so it's nice and short. This is actually a pretty shockingly light crank arm. Impressive, modern, big, bulky, ugly DRLX. Now the trick is you have to tap this side out. Sometimes you just push it out. Sometimes you take a rubber mallet and give it a couple of taps just to get it loose. Come on, brother. All the way. And this is what the drive side looks like. So it's got the bottom bracket spindle built into it. This side is like permanently swaged and affixed, so it doesn't come off. You only pull the non-drive arm off. And look at these rings. They've got a little bit of skid marks from the chain. Oh, this middle one's got a lot of skid marks from the chain. Someone's always trying to shift up from this little ring, and it was always dragging, or they're riding in like too big a gear in the back. There's a little ring in the front, so they're cross-chaining all the time. The chain's always rubbing and grinding on the chain rings. But they're usable. There doesn't actually look to be a lot of road wear. It's hard to tell. A lot of modern chain rings look super worn out, but they're pre-worn out from the factory to make index shifting work better. So it's hard to tell if they're actually super worn or that's what they look like. So I'll have to clean it to see for sure. But hopefully this cleans up and this makes a nice crank for somebody. Now we got these bottom bracket cups, and they have little teeny tiny divots like reverse splines on the outside. And all the different companies and all the different brands and all the different years made different sizes. This is the most common Shimano tool. There's also cup style tools. Here's your Pedros external bottom bracket, 16 notch, 44 millimeter cup. So it's kind of just the same thing. It's a cup with these splines instead of just a flat piece of metal with these splines. And does this one fit this thing? Oh, it does. This is Shimano compatible. That fits great. This has wrench flats in the back, so you get a big adjustable wrench. It's also got a square 3/8 drive, so I can put a 3/8 ratchet on here or breaker bar. But let's try this, guys. The most common, those cup tools are 13, 14, 15 bucks. A lot of the nicer Park ones and alloy ones and stuff could be 50, 60, 70 bucks. This is like 10 bucks off eBay. Super common, and it's got the other tool already built in. Now, drive sides usually reverse thread on most bikes, unless it's Italian or French. And non-drive side is regular thread, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So let's see if we can get this loosey. This also has this giant swing arm in the way, so that's going to be a bit of a trick. Ooh, all right, and that just loosened right up. You have to be careful. You really want this tool on those splines. If you're all crooked and cockeyed and barely on there, you're going to strip the aluminum out of those. Make your life real hard. So all the way on, nice and firm, nice and straight. You don't want it all cockeyed. This is just a long, slow process. Let's see if this cup makes it faster. Oh yeah, look at that. It clears everything. Spin, spin, spin. I am not going to take it all the way out. So I want to start the other side first, and I want to see it all janky if it's all tight. Hoo-ah. So I flipped it around again so you see the other side. Another thing to note, I can see right here, is that most of these external style bottom brackets are oversized for fatter frames. They're oversized for 73 millimeter bottom bracket shell widths, or most bikes are really 68. So they come with a bunch of plastic spacers, like headset spacers, like little thin plastic spacers. And so you can dial in your chain line or shim out, for a skinny bottom bracket shell. Sometimes guys will put like one on this side and two on that side, or this one's got all three on this side to really get the cranks out as wide as possible. That's something to note. Like I said, this one's going to be reverse thread, so it's going to be righty-loosey. This side's also real grimy. Let's see if we can get this thing on here. All right. Hey, not tight at all either. Usually bottom brackets are very tight for a reason, so they don't creak. These aluminum little cups, it's easy to strip out, so guys are a little more careful. All right. So this is the bottom bracket coming all the way out. Here it's got the spacers. It's only got two. I thought these usually had three. I don't know. It's got this little plastic thing built in. This thing comes off. I usually like to leave it in, so it helps me identify which side's the drive side. This one's real dirty. It says do not disassemble on here. I think that's a lie. People will take little pokey tools and pop these open and blast them out with WD-40 or solvent, then refill them with grease and put this little cap back on. It does have an R stamped on it for right, so that's good. It's got the Titan with a little arrow pointing on it, so you know it's reverse thread. So that's one of the real nice big benefits of these modern things. Oh yes, And here's the non-drive, and it has one of these little plastic spacers. That's real normal. Two on the drive to get cranks out, one on this side to take up the slack. It's labeled left. It's got the little drive barrel to let you know. And that's why when the cranks are still on, I wiggle them back and forth to make sure these bearings are still good. So these bearings are good. There's nothing wrong with this bottom bracket. It's got lots of miles left. It's got no slop or play. So clean this up a little bit and sell it as a nice crank and bottom bracket combo. It's always nice to have the right matching things because it's so hard to tell with all this modern stuff. What fits? What's got a 24mm spline? What's got a this spindle and that spindle? I was trying to sell this stuff. People ask me questions. What does this fit? Is it? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know how to tell the difference. So this is real normal standard-y stuff, which is cool. So that's about it for this. How to remove these. They go back on the exact same way. Just like any other bottom bracket, I will usually start the non-drive side and thread it in about halfway, then do the drive side. And check this side, check that side, make sure everything's aligned. Make sure everything goes in real nice and smooth and easy by hand. If it's too tight, it means you're cross-threaded. If you have to put a tool on it, it means you're cross-threaded. Pull it back out, try again. I'll spin it the wrong way sometimes to try and get that first thread to catch. Then you can go the right way, like if it just will not start. Get those guys all the way in, then cinch the drive side up pretty tight, and then finish cinching off the non-drive. Then you slide that crank right back in, press that arm on, tighten that little plastic tightener nut, and then you can tighten the actual bolts down the arm to hold it in place, and you're golden. So, pretty easy peasy. Most people believe there's a myth in the bike industry that these external bottom bracket, these external bearing cups. So on a normal square taper bottom bracket, all the bearings are inside here. They don't poke out of the frame. And there's a myth that those wear out fast. These external cups are better because the bearings are bigger, and on the outside they don't wear out. It's a lie. These things wear out way faster than old square taper stuff. Especially if you're talking high quality square taper stuff to modern bike parts, which are very medium quality. Even the high-end expensive stuff is about as good as old medium stuff. Old vintage high-end parts are way nicer than modern stuff. Usually lighter too, and prettier. So that's that. Popping these off and back on is pretty easy with just a $10 tool. If those would have been super, super, super tight on there, I would have busted out the old breaker bar. This is 3-inch. It looks like a ratchet, but it's not, so it's extra strong, so you can get leverage on here. I often save an old tube I cut out of a bike or an old chromoly handlebar. So you get on there and really get some leverage. But be careful, things will try and pop off. Hold that on tight while doing it, you know. Doesn't slip out and strip all your splines. That's really all you need to know about the basics of replacing external bottom bracket cranks. A lot of other brands and a lot of other cranks, and a lot of them have their own peculiarities, I'm sure. But Shimano is the most common, and a lot of the stuff that's not Shimano copies the Shimano. It's great, and so it'll all kind of work the same. So anyways, thanks for watching.